Hello, I'm hoping everybody can hear me okay. So share my screen if I can. So let me just check whether you can hear me okay. You hear me now, Anya? Sorry, folks, we just had a technical hiccup to start with there.
I think everyone can hear you.
Everybody can hear me okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So welcome everybody. Thank you for giving up some of your valuable time this evening for what will be roughly about just short of an hour introduction to GuidedSMILE. My name is James Hamill. I'm the Clinical Director of GuidedSMILE Europe and CEO of Chorus 3D. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a little look at some aims and objectives, which we'll cover over the next little while. So what we want to try to do is be able to introduce GuidedSMILE to you as a treatment concept for full arch. I want to provide an overview of the data capture required to launch a case. This is critical and probably one of the most critical parts of the process. And I want to demonstrate the sequential surgical steps required to carry out a typical GuidedSMILE case. I want to illustrate what is our most common way to get to final bridge, which is using what's called the rapid appliance, which is simply 2 appointments. And obviously let you know how you can get started or if you want to know some more information. So as I've said, GuidedSMILE is a company that we are proud to be the European partner for. Which we started back in 2021, really was when we started. And it is driven by a company called Chorus 3D, which is a full service lab based here in Northern Ireland, where we have a team of approximately 30 odd people, which sit behind this product to be able and to allow us to be able to service the market that we currently service, which is UK, Ireland, Germany, and Switzerland. And we're lucky in that whenever we started this, we were able to place it within very nice premises called the Ellis Brown Centre, which is in County Fermanagh, which houses the lab as well as our training centre. So we have 2 fully equipped surgeries, we have a lecture theatre, and here we've been able to provide education around this subject for almost 380 dentists now. So quite a number of people have been over to see us for our 2-day course, which I'll give you the dates for next year later on. And that's often a starting point for people to start their process of learning more about this topic. One of the things we've done over the last 3 or 4 years is really try to provide as much resource and a pathway for people to get involved. So the very first bit that people do is probably download our ebooks, and we have quite a significant number of digital resources now available on our website, which are very well laid out, and they often show you the journey of the patient as well as the steps that are required to complete a GuidedSMILE case. So that's an important resource. We have an online training university called GuidedSMILE University, which is open to dentists, nurses, technicians, and treatment coordinators. You can get about 8 to 9 hours of CPD on that. That's free. You just register online via our website, and that's another very useful resource. Then we have our 2-day course, as we've talked about, which is where you can come see a live surgery, get hands-on experience on models, and we delve into things a lot deeper in terms of the process. And this year, we started our own mentoring program, which we're very proud of. We're the only company really that provides this, certainly within this full arch space. And we have a total of 8 approved mentors now covering all over the UK and Ireland. The whole idea of that is to support you in your first cases and to help you progress through the learning of these types of techniques as effectively as possible. And then we have more advanced skills such as FP1, which we have worked alongside Martin Wood and I to develop in the latter part of the development of the company. So we probably have a full pathway there to suit most people. These are our mentors, as they're Northern Ireland, England, Wales, Scotland. We cover everything, and you can go and watch them work. You can go and see them in terms of how they organize a case. You can invite them for chairside support to your practice, and also you can refer more complex cases to them and work together side by side. So it's a really important element of what we do, and we're absolutely delighted to have all of these guys on board. So what is GuidedSMILE? You'll see a little video on the top right hand side of the screen, which sort of shows you the process. But essentially, GuidedSMILE is a true stackable system. In fact, the people who invented GuidedSMILE were the people who actually invented a true stackable system. So these were the people who brought this to market. It's a patented, it's a fully guided, and it's a prosthetically led process. So we start with the end in mind, and we work all the way back from there. So it's pretty much like taking a single tooth, only it's more complex because it's a full arch. And what GuidedSMILE have done is they've been able to systemize that entire process. So they've thought of every little single step along that way, from how you take your records to the fitting of the final bridge. And that's very important to understand with GuidedSMILE, is that it's not just the surgical guide. This brings you all the way through to your final prosthetic. And that's one of the hidden gems of this process, because that's where you can really start to save chairside time and improve your efficiency. So we've built up ourselves at Course 3D a huge amount of experience, now with over 2,000 cases under our belt. But the larger team within the USA, where this all started, are up to almost 40,000 cases now. So there's a lot of history across many implant systems and many different types of patients that we encounter to help you get started, and you can draw down on that experience as you use the process. So it delivers a bone reduction guidance. Okay, so bone reduction is often essential in these cases to give you restorative space, which we can talk about. Osteotomy guidance, so where the implants are going to go in terms of depth and direction, and also implant control and abutment timing. This is important when we've got angulations, so that you can position the implant in the correct rotational position for the indexing, so that the MUA, the angled MUA, goes into the correct position. One of the beauties of GuidedSMILE is the simplified prosthetic conversion. You do not need a technician chairside. It takes about 10 to 15 minutes to convert the bridge ready for fitting. And then you get a very simple conversion to the final restoration via the rapid appliance. So these are all things that we will look at. This is a little video just to show you clinically what it looks like. And we go into detail on the course about how you set all of this up. So buccal flap raise, this is the pin guide delivering the fixation base, which is pinned in place using special pins. The pin guide is removed. Fixation base is then used after tooth extraction to manage the bone reduction. This can be done with burrs, piezo, bone saws, however you want to do it. And once the bone reduction is done, we're then into osteotomy use, where you're going to use the guide to place the implants, and the obviously advantages of metal, which we will chat about later on, providing full abutment control, temporary cylinders with a pre-made prosthetic, which then is picked up on temporary cylinders, sutured, grafted, the guide is removed, and then the bridge is then screwed into position. That's essentially the process in a few seconds. There's some key features, things that maybe some of you may or may not be aware of. So the most common case that we do this on is an FP3. So for those of you who don't know what FP3 is, it's basically a bridge with gum and tooth on it, right through to FP1. FP1 is certainly a hot topic at the minute in this type of full arch reconstruction, and GuidedSMILE allows you to do all of that. So you have the full range of different types of cases that you can do. Typically, surgery time is between 2 and 3 hours, and that's from local anaesthetic to the fit of the temporary bridge. So that encompasses it all, not just the surgical aspect of it. With a conversion time, really it's a bit shorter than that, it's 15 to 20 minutes to convert the bridge. One of the key attributes of GuidedSMILE is that it's not a bone-fitted guide. Okay, it is a tooth-delivered guide in a dentate case using floating guide technology for the fixation base, which floats off the bone. So it doesn't actually require the bone to seat, and that allows it to be seated very quickly. And also means, because we're using metal, that we don't have to have a very elaborate design of guide round into the palate or across the retromolar pads or anything for support. It's a very cleverly designed piece of engineering in terms of how the pins are placed, so that you don't have to worry about the stability of the guide and that you just need it on the buccal face, which is pretty handy. You can actually see what you're doing, because metal, we can have it fairly small in terms of cross section, and you can get irrigation down to the site. The beauty of metal is that it is rigid. It will not flex or break under pressure, and this allows you to increase the accuracy of what you're doing. Plastic will flex, and there is always the potential for it to break. So this is the reason that one of the reasons that we use metal in our guides. So why would you use GuidedSMILE? Well, we all need accessible solutions in our practice, and traditionally full arch can be pretty stressful. It can require quite a lot of logistics, especially if you're bringing in a dental technician. And we all know it can take quite a lot of time, with many practices booking out an entire day just to do a single arch. And everybody can get a little bit stressed and upset about the whole thing, especially if it doesn't go to plan. GuidedSMILE is a little bit different, and really it's all about workflow and all about creating efficiency, right from the very start when the patient first attends, right to the end of their final fitting of their final bridge. So although we will talk about the speed of how you can do it, that only comes with a little bit of time and a little bit of practice and training of your team and understanding exactly what's going on. But it's all about the workflow. So we all have these patients in our practice. We have perio patients who need to be treated. We have edentulous patients and older patients who are now looking for implant solutions rather than having dentures. They're becoming more savvy. They know what they want. And really the full arch growth within the market has been considerable. And therefore, more and more dentists want access to learn how to treat these patients, but very importantly, how they can treat them in a predictable fashion without having lots of the complexity and the risks that come with this type of surgery and prosthetic solution. We also, unfortunately, have a younger cohort of patients now, and they also require treatment. So every practice in the country will have patients that are suitable for this type and are looking for this type of procedure. So why do dentists love GuidedSMILE? Well, one, it's pretty fast to do, and quite often most of our customers don't use sedation for a lot of their patients. They pretty much treat them under local anaesthetic. You do not need a technician support, which reduces cost. It helps in terms of the logistical side of things, not having to work and manage somebody else in your practice. And one of the things that I found was very quite nice about this is that you could do a double arch or a dual arch in the morning without having to worry about it running on to 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening. So that produces a bit less stress for yourself and for your patient, and importantly for your team, and it removes the guesswork. We have worked everything out, and I'll show you the effort that goes into planning one of these cases. So we try to remove all the guesswork, so that essentially this case has been rehearsed digitally prior to the patient having actually receiving the treatment. So all of that allows us to help reduce overall appointment hours. And in the work that we have done, we've seen that reduced by 66%, which is a very significant number. And overall, we can say it's safer, faster, smaller, and stronger. And although the monetary side of it isn't always everybody's drive, it is important to understand just the advantages of introducing these types of workflows. So we do see generally that our customers, and on the left-hand side, you can see the example of one customer, what happened in their practice when they introduced this as a treatment process. They clearly improved their implant numbers, because you're being able to offer perhaps a treatment that you're not offering currently. And overall, there is a significant saving in chairside time, which improves your hourly profit and can generate good, valuable income into your practice in a predictable manner. So we've talked about systemization, and the systemization of GuidedSMILE runs all the way through from record taking, case planning and design, the surgical approach, and the final restoration. And what that does, it gives you probably a safer way to work. And certainly in the world that we live in within medical legal, you'll see how as we go through the presentation, you will build up really quite a lot of information about the case, and you build up a good audit trail that can be very well incorporated into the patient's notes and records. And I think that from a medical legal point of view, that's a very, very good idea. It's the world's #1 full arch guided system, which is great, and it is only there for a reason, and that's really because so far it is clearly the best on the market in terms of its overall offering, because it's just had so much experience built up within it. And what we have tried to do is we've really tried to make the education and mentorship as comprehensive as possible, because that's really where the difference is. Just giving somebody a surgical guide or a complex surgical guide like this, it rarely is successful without support along the way, which is important. It's a very versatile system, and it's not limited to any implant system. All you need is a guided kit from the implant that you use. And thankfully, over the years, we've built up a lot of experience with lots of these companies. So we know their implant system, we know their guided kit, and that as a service to you can often be reassuring, because almost certainly we'll have come across most of the problems that exist with different systems and how they operate. We have a very open and transparent pricing process, which is visible for everybody to see on our website. We don't want you to have hidden costs. We want you to know exactly what you're getting into. And we have 4 main options, and pink is the most common. This is our Chrome or GuidedSMILE Complete option. This includes everything, inclusive of your final monolithic zirconia bridge and components, which are compatible components. If you want to have OEM, you can, but a lot of our customers are happy with compatible components in their final bridge. So that's the most popular at $4,995. You've got Chrome surgery if you just want to go to the provisional bridge and you want to finish it perhaps with your own laboratory or in a different technique, that's fine. We've got Combi Guide, which is works very well for overdentures or full arch delayed loading. That gives you all the planning and all the surgical guides. You can add in something like a temporary denture if you want on top of that. And then we've got Chrome Natural, which is for FP1 cases, which are a little bit more complex and time consuming to plan, but also more complex for use surgically. So we want to be, we do like to be as clear as physically possible in terms of the cost. So for a GuidedSMILE case from start to finish, we're going to look at the records, we're going to look at the surgery, and we're going to look at the restoration. Capturing the right records at the start is critical. Whatever we put into this system has a direct effect on what comes out at the far side. So our barrier to entry in terms of record quality is quite high. Just to let you know, we reject 7 out of 10 cases. Or another way to put it is 7 out of 10 cases that come into us have an issue with the records, either quality or things that are missing, or maybe things that have been simply overlooked. Some of this is a misunderstanding, just maybe as people get started. But we are very, very rigid in terms of the records, because we generally will be able to produce you a very, very predictable result, but it starts at this point. So we talk about a tripod of data, and every case starts the same. It starts with photographs, STLs or impressions, and a CBCT. Sometimes that varies slightly, but in terms of the photographs, what's important is to provide us at least these 6 photographs, which are a smile, full face smile in focus. Hopefully that's not the best picture on the screen. I think it just looks a little bit off, but we also want an exaggerated smile. This is very important for assessing transition line. If we can have a profile, that also helps us in regards to looking at vertical dimension. And then we want 3 retracted photographs, an occlusion from the front and an occlusion from either side. If you can provide us with those 6 photographs, then we're off to a good starting point. We use the photographs continually. We use them for occlusion, we use them for OVD, we use them for our smile design, obviously. And if we're starting with a poor photograph, it does have a knock-on effect. One little tip to watch out for is edentulous cases, like you can see on the screen. And it's very useful for us to have a photograph with the patient with the denture out. Okay, you can see the case on this lady. On the left-hand side, if we were to work from that photograph, we would end up with a very different plan than if we were working to the photograph on the right-hand side. Okay. When you're taking photographs, try not to have the patient tilted down or chin up, because that does make it much more difficult for us to upload and to stitch everything together. So really making sure that you can see the ears is a good tip, and that will help ensure that the patient is in a good position. This is typically the types of photographs, unfortunately, we do receive, and that makes life a little bit difficult for us. So it is important to check your records before you send them in, just to make sure they're as good as possible, because it has a massive effect in terms of the speed of your case through the process. From the photographs, we produce a smile simulation using a company called Preview, which gives you a starting point to have a conversation with your patient. This comes as part of the package and usually is produced within 24 hours. So you can see a good photograph with good lighting, with the patient directly onto the camera, makes this simulation much better. And it, as I say, gives us a good point from which to start. Another thing which we do see every so often is facial scanning. We would probably like to see more of it. And one of the main advantages of this is that we can actually physically put the setup or the prosthetically driven plan inside the patient's face in a 3-dimensional way. And this helps reduce problems that you would see later on, such as center line discrepancies, maybe some cants where there's a bit of a run, because sometimes that's very difficult to pick up on a 2-dimensional photograph on models. So if you have a 3D facial scanner, they're brilliant. This one that I've shown you is what's called MediSmile. So that's the first part of the tripod. The second is your impressions. We accept digital or analog. We don't mind. Probably 70% come in digitally now. But even when we receive these records, problems can occur. So what you need to think about whenever you're taking an impression is you really want to provide us with as much information as possible. You can see the red X's on the 2 on the lower right-hand side, which really are incomplete or not good enough. We really want to see the sulcus, as much sulcus information as you can give us, not just the teeth. We need the soft tissue, we need the palate, we need the lingual, almost as if you're taking an impression for a denture. That's really what the way you want to try to think about it in your head. If on some of the scanners you need to switch off the AI to allow for more soft tissue pickup, then please do so. Certainly the iTero, it helps if you do that, because we really want to capture as much of this information as possible. But it's these types of things with the records that we receive where we will have problems that we won't be able to proceed with. This is an example of a case that was sent in to us for a full arch plan. But if you look, we don't really have any sulcus information here at all. We have a very nice scan of the palate and 2 teeth, but we don't have any sulcus information. That's where we're going to be placing our pins to hold the fixation base. And also in this particular case, the dentist wanted a temporary denture. There's no real way for us to provide a temporary denture in this situation. So it is important to select. This would have probably been better with an analog impression rather than a digital one. As well as taking the impression, you got to think about the bite. So the thing that we ask everybody to think about is, will the record I send in, will the lab be able to articulate it? Okay. And will the information that you send in your occlusal record allow us to do so? So sometimes blue moose bites are fine, but a lot of these cases don't have very many teeth. They're overclosed. They sometimes have mobile teeth. And so bites like this can often be of very limited use to us. So what we have to do sometimes, and this is just an example to show you actually, this is a digital bite. And you can see that this digital bite is pretty inaccurate. Okay, so we don't trust a lot of the digital bites that are sent in to us. This digital bite, you'll see, has been measured as 2.2 mils out. Okay, that's going to cause a significant problem if we trust it when you come to do your final or to do your temporary or fit your temporary restoration. Okay, we definitely have a problem. So what we often do is we create what we call a JC Tryon. And the JC Tryon is essentially a prosthetic that we design in the lab digitally. This case is very overclosed, and we want to re-establish the vertical dimension. So we will design this. It's almost like a partial denture, and we send this back out to you. You fit it in the patient's mouth. You adjust it to the vertical dimension that you want. We'll get you close, but we may not get you perfectly. And once you have it adjusted, you then re-record the occlusion at that point and then send it back to us, and we then re-articulate the case and move it forward. This happens quite a lot because, as I've said, these cases are complex in many situations, and we want to make sure we get the best starting point we can. So the JC Tryon is a very useful tool that we use quite a lot. Another simple method is what we call a putty bite, which is just a bit of lab putty rolled up and popped into edentulous areas and allow the patient to close, send the putty bite into us, and we're then able to use that on models when we re-articulate the case. And this works extremely well. The third part of the tripod is DICOM. Now with DICOM, we do have a number of basic rules. We only want the raw data files, the .dcm files, and we want them in a zip folder. So don't try to send us 400 files separately, which has happened in the past. We want them all zipped into a single folder. If the patient is dentate or partially dentate, then make sure that the teeth are apart in the scanner. So either on cotton wool or a bite fork, because we don't want the tooth anatomy to be, what's the word I'm looking for? To be it's hard for us to see it when the teeth are in occlusion. So we find it difficult to stitch the STL to the CBCT in that case. Okay, so make sure the teeth are apart. In edentulous cases, we want the teeth in occlusion. And this is done by what's called a dual scan technique. And I'll just very briefly explain this. We go into this in much more detail in the course. But you can see where the green ticks are. So a dentate case, teeth apart. On the right-hand side, a dentate case with the teeth together. That's going to get a red X and be sent back. For the edentulous cases, we use a scan appliance. This can be a JC Tryon, it can be an existing denture that the patient wears, or something that we have to remake from scratch. And you put radiographic markers on it, which are indicated by the green circles. You put that into the patient's mouth, you ask them to occlude, and you scan the patient with it. And what's important, and if you look at the yellow on the screen down here, you will see that there's no air gap. Okay, if you look on this right-hand side, you'll see an air gap, more easily seen on this screen on the right-hand side. So the distance or the space between the green, which is the soft tissue of the palate, and the pink, which is the fit surface of the scan appliance, that would be rejected. And simply because we need the scan appliance hard up against the soft tissue, therefore you have to take it in occlusion. And then not only do you scan, these are little radiographic stickers that go on the dentures or the scan appliances on the left-hand side. This happens to be a dual arch case. You scan the patient with that in their mouth, and you also scan the scan appliance separately in the machine. So you end up with two data sets, or two CBCT data sets. One of the big problems with DICOM is movement. Okay, often in the lower anterior, and you'll see this double imaging. The scan will also be rejected because we can't plan on it. And you can see on the right-hand side where there is an overlap. And this is just simply where there's been patient movement as the scan has been taken, and the software has not been able to stitch the images together correctly. The other one, although this scan looks great for the lower jaw, the problem is that we're actually being asked to plan an upper jaw. So we don't have enough information. So there's a lot of missing data. And really what you want is you want to end up with a nice clean scan. The softwares now are very good at handling scatter, but what they can't overcome is movement or bits of missing information. So we want to try and have as clean a scan as possible. It helps things dramatically. So how you put on a case, or how you go through the journey, everything is done web-based. All the orders are placed on the web through our website, and that's a pretty straightforward process. And then we go through a QC internally of the data that I've just shown you, photographs, STLs, CBCT. We then enter restorative planning, followed by surgical planning, followed by case approval. And once we get case approval, we're into manufacture, then across to the surgery and the restoration. So the planning is all done restoratively led. It is done in exocad, an example on the screen. And what we're looking to do here is we're looking to set the teeth up as harmoniously as possible. And as I've said, a lot of these cases are overclosed, they're missing teeth. They require a little bit of work at this stage to try to get the setup as good as possible. And there may be a little bit of to and fro between us and you just to make sure we get the setup as close as we can. But quite often there are little bits of compromise along the way. Once we have the setup, we then take that information and we then bring it into RealGuide. And we start to stack all the information into a special software within RealGuide for GuidedSMILE. And once we've brought in the restoration, which is the most important part, we then can back plan our implants, our MUAs, and then from there we can design our surgical guides. To get case approval, we do several things. So once we have the surgical planning done, we then send you a Loom video using the software, which is a recording of us going through the planning. It typically lasts between 5 and 10 minutes, depending on the case. And also with you get an AI generated transcript alongside this. This gives you the option, you can watch this at your leisure. You can watch it multiple times and give yourself a really good overview of what's going on. Alongside this, you get a PDF, which will take you through implant by implant with all your separate screenshots, and also gives you a list of all the components, implants, multi-unit abutments that is required for you to be able to order that from your implant representative. So you get that as well. And in some situations, if it's required, you will also have an online meeting with one of our planners to be able to go back over the case to ensure that everything is as you want it and that you understand it. If you have RealGuide, which is a free software, we can also share the case with you on the cloud, so you can also see what we see in the RealGuide software. And that's a very useful thing to be able to have. Once we get case approval, we're into manufacture. We manufacture everything in-house. Nothing is sent out. We have our own metal printer for printing the metal guides. We have high-tech printing and milling machines so that we can get product as to the highest possible standard we can. So everything is inside made by our team. And we produce essentially a box or a list of components that come out to you ready for your surgery. And we'll look at these in a little minute. You also get 2 surgery mats. One surgery mat is for your operative or your surgery wall, and it is best described as a single snapshot of your surgery. It gives you all the information that you require to complete the case. So you don't have to go back looking over Looms or PDFs or any of that information. It is essentially what you have agreed with us, and it's all broken down implant by implant. You also have a surgery mat for your team, which allow all the implants to be laid out in the order that they've been planned, the MUAs and the temporary cylinders, which is very useful for keeping things organized during your surgery. So at surgery time, you've got a few bits and pieces that you need to be aware of. You've got your pin guide, which delivers your fixation base. Your fixation base is held in place by 3, 4, or 5 chrome GuidedSMILE pins. And on the fixation base, you'll see these little blue plugs. These are little locks, which like little Swiss locks that pull out and push in to be able to allow the various stacked parts of the guide to attach. These are very, very smart and work extremely well, much better than things like magnets or screws. This allows you to be really quite efficient whenever you're changing the various stack bits of the guide. The fixation base also acts as your bone reduction plane, and you'll see, and we'll see in photographs, how it floats off the buccal wall. You've got your osteotomy guide, you've got your carrier guide, which is for fitting your MUAs, temporary cylinders, and picking up your bridge. You've got your printed provisional, and also what's called a printed or a rapid appliance. So those are all your components. So the process is local anesthetic. Let's talk about an upper. Lift the buccal flap, attach the fixation base, the silver bit, to the clear bit, which is the pin guide, and it is the fixation base is then delivered over the top of the remaining teeth to allow pinning of the fixation base. This is done in a certain sequence, which we teach on the course, and there's a very specific way to do this, because this is the most important part of your surgery. If you place the fixation base incorrectly, that error is going to go all the way through your surgery, as you can imagine. So it's absolutely critical that this bit is done correct. Once the fixation base is in place, you remove the remaining teeth, if it's a part dentate case, and then you flatten the bone to this level. The amount of bone removed is purely down to hiding transition line, the vertical dimension that has been worked out in the pre-prosthetic plan, and also to allow you enough restorative space for your final bridge. You need at least 10 to 12 millimeters for zirconia. So we work all of that out prior to getting to this point. So none of this is going to be a surprise, all right? But generally speaking, you're going to have to remove some bone if you're doing an FP3. So once the bone reduction is done, you're then putting on your carrier guide, that little bit of plastic that you can see up here with the black lines, and that's to check that the bone reduction is correct. And then you move on to your osteotomy guide. Now, the osteotomy guide clips into the fixation base just like everything else, and you go through your normal surgical protocol with whatever implant system you're using to prepare and to place the implant. The osteotomy guide, remember, gives you full depth control, rotational control for angled MUAs, and full positional control of the implants. Once the implants are in, okay, and fully positioned, you're then ready then for your prosthetic pickup. MUAs go through the carrier guide, and you can see these black lines on the carrier guide. These are what that black line indicates is an angled MUA. So you will have the rotation already worked out from the osteotomy guide. MUAs go on, temporary cylinders go on, and then in the kit you also get blue little plugs as well as rubber dam blockouts, and you place those on, temporary bridge over the top, blue plugs in, and it will look something like this, where you can see the temporary cylinder coming through the pre-prepared hole in the bridge, and then you lute the bridge to the temporary cylinder. And this is done via this product, an American product called Stellar, which works extremely well. And once that is luted and cured, you simply unscrew the temporary bridge, and you're now going to repeat it with the rapid appliance. Now, the rapid appliance is not going to be sent home with the patient. You're going to hold on to that for your final restoration conversion, which I'll show you in a little minute. The beauty of the rapid is that you also now have a spare temporary. Okay, so should anything happen, the temporary bridge that you fit, you have an immediate temporary, another spare temporary that you can fit for the patient if that should happen. Okay, so you tidy things up. The conversion is very quick, takes about 10 or 15 minutes. You can train one of your nurses or team to do it, or you can do it yourself. but you certainly don't need a technician chairside. Closure, grafting, and you're fitting your temporary bridge. Okay, so that's pretty much the surgical procedure. One of the beauties of this is that we can get a very predictable temporary prosthetic. Why? Because we have worked this out. Okay, we have worked out the restorative space, we've worked out the bite, we've worked out the aesthetics, all from your records that you have sent in initially. So now you can see really why the records are so important, because what we want to be able to try to achieve is such a predictable prosthetic at this point that your conversion to the final is as straightforward as possible. So we're trying not to backtrack, okay, even in dual arch cases. So then how do we convert this surgical temporary to the final bridge? The most common way that our customers do this is via the rapid appliance, typically in 2 appointments. If you want to use photogrammetry, horizontal scan bodies, vertical scan bodies, you can do so. It's no problem. And we will deal with that because we do have customers who do it. However, this technique that I'm going to show you is still the most popular way of doing it. So what the lab needs to go to final is they need obviously implant position. So you've already picked that up in the rapid appliance, which is the thing or the item that you're going to send back to the lab. So we have it. You can use it to confirm passivity, tooth position, bite, OVD, center line, occlusal table, soft tissue profile, and you can build any changes that you want into that rapid prosthetic, which is why it's so quick and so efficient at what it does. And typically, people are bringing the patient back at 12 to 14 weeks, and you're going through what you're going to do with this rapid appliance. You're checking the aesthetics, you're checking the bite, checking speech, how well the soft tissue has healed. Do you need to change any MUAs? What's the transition line look like? All of those things. And if you want to take an interim step, so if you don't want to go all the way to final and you're making maybe some changes, you can still do a printed try-in. That's no problem. You just need to let us know. And you can see in a case like this where things just aren't right, it has taken a couple of attempts to make sure that we try to get the prosthetics as good as we can. So then typically at 16 weeks, you're then ready for your rapid conversion. And again, this is all outlined within a checklist and within a systemized process for you. But essentially all you need is some light-bodied silicone, okay, a bit of adhesive, some bite reg to check the bite, radiographs to help you make sure everything is fully seated, camera to take some pictures, a bit of bite reg material, typically Blue Moose is what most people use, and just things that you've got in your surgery already, with handpiece with burrs, your restorative kit, a little bit of stellar if you need to use it, or maybe a couple of MUAs if you're going to change MUAs, which doesn't happen very often. And this is a dual arch case. Patient comes in, temporaries are removed, rapids go in. Once the rapids are in, you're checking the bite, checking the aesthetics. If you need to adjust it, you just take a burr, adjust it, mark the center line, add composite if you want longer teeth or trim it back, whatever you want to do. Adjust the bite, record the bite, and then reline the rapid appliances with light-bodied silicone so that we can see the new soft tissue. And now in the lab, we have everything that we need. Okay, we have implant position, bite, vertical, tooth position, soft tissue. We have everything that we require to be able then to convert this in a digital format to a final bridge. Passivity, of course, is extremely important, and you've got to take your time in terms of making sure that your rapid is passive. If it's not, you're probably going to find you may have a problem later on. So you have to use whatever method you want, whether it's X-ray, Sheffield test, what it feels like, visual, direct visual from the temporary cylinder, contacting onto the MUA. You do, or maybe it's a combination of all of those, but you got to make sure that the thing is passive. If you're in a single arch, you send us a new opposing impression, a bite, and the photographs, and then the details. Okay, and this is just an example. This is a dual arch case, and we will typically do dual arch cases direct to finish. Okay, you can see the center line's been remarked. The bite is there. You can see beautiful soft tissue pickup and all the implant position. And although we're in a world of digitization, this is I suppose, still an analog way of doing this, and it works beautifully. You can also send us in a little video of the patient to show us what the rapid appliance looks like in their mouth, which is very helpful. Marking the center lines, you don't just mark it with a black pen. We advise that you cut it. You can see both of these require center line checks. And changing cants or runs, you can just take a burr and slightly adjust it yourself so that we can visually see it when it comes into the laboratory. And it can be just as simple as a small change of adjusting, in this particular case, a lateral incisor. You can make as many notes as you want. Nothing beats actually doing it on the rapid appliance, and we still prefer that that's what's done. But you can take various photographs and explain things as best you can. Things that we see are problems, or people have getting material stuck between the temporary cylinder and the MUA. These cases will be rejected. So it's very important that you ensure seating of the rapid appliance as accurately as possible. Other little things to note are these little areas where it looks we don't know in the lab, is that because there's not enough material there, therefore you would end up potentially with a gap on your final bridge, or is it just that it's hard against the soft tissue? So there's little tips and tricks that we can teach you to make this process as predictable as possible. And we take the information that you send us, and we create a master model. And from that master model, we then go through the process of designing and ensuring that we have all the information that we need to be able to then hopefully go to final bridge. So here you can see this process. This is our implant position. This is our soft tissue. And then we take that information into exocad and we go ahead then with our design. And one of the beauties of guided surgery is that all the implants are in the right position. Okay, it's a prosthetically led process. So this generally means the prosthetic side of things is much more straightforward. We very rarely use metal within the bridges because we have enough restorative space. We don't need to overcome angulation challenges. So that's why the 98% of what we produce is monolithic zirconia, which works extremely well in situations like this where everything is pre-planned and organized. So having the implants in the right position really helps a huge amount when it comes to the restorative side. You can see all the implants are in a lovely position. Okay, so we design the bridge. You will then get an approval via exocad web viewer, which I think most people are becoming more familiar with, but that essentially allows you to see the bridge, compare it to the existing rapid, and make sure that you're happy. And you can see the difference in the two there, the blue being the existing and the white being the new. So we use monolithic zirconia, we use argon, that is our preferred zirconia, and it can be finished in different ways, but as I've said, less than 2% will be bar supported. And the final prosthetic, what we're really looking for is we're looking to give you and your patient a robust prosthetic that looks good, that's easy for them to keep clean, very, very important in these cases, and one that's going to last them. And with monolithic zirconia, you can now make things look really very beautiful. You can build in some imbrication, you can build staining and coloring, depending what you want to do. But we're going to try to make this bridge as convex as we can, flat to convex, just so that it's nicely against the soft tissue, so it's easy to care for. We do not want to end up with situations like this, which are largely avoidable when things are planned correctly. And we have on the right-hand side, these types of problems, which is not what we want to see. This is impossible for the patient to keep clean, a ridge lap bridge. And this is all due to the fact that not enough restorative space has been built into this case from day one. And also things like bridges being too thin. We stick to the parameters of the material that we're using. Okay, so remember 10 to 12 mils of vertical space is required for a safe zirconia bridge. We also don't want implants that are too close together. So how do you get started? There's lots of different ways. But essentially, the first thing probably to do is to visit our website, www.chorus3d.com. And in there, you'll see education and resources. And you can download our ebooks. I'll show you a little image of what they look like. If you need help with case selection, then that's no problem. We offer a suitability service on the website. You can download some initial information. It's a service that doesn't cost any money, but it allows people to maybe start to get a feel of how these cases are planned. So one of our planners will look at this, approve, maybe send you a very rough plan just to give you an idea, or maybe help you in terms of some of the records that maybe that are required. If it's an edentulous case, it's a slightly different process. And ultimately, the whole idea is to get to an online case submission, submit your records, and then you've got the whole mentoring and training that can take place after that. We've got 4 main ebooks. We've got an introduction to Chrome Guided Smile. We've got the surgical protocol, which is very important, and everything that I've shown you is detailed in this booklet. We've got an introduction to grammetry, which is our solution to photogrammetry, and this is using OptiSplint. There's lots of different ways that this can be done. And then we've got 10 reasons why you would want to adopt guided surgery into your practice. So these are just some examples of what we have. We do have some courses coming up. We have one in November. We have on the 20th and 21st. That's our last one of this year. And there are first 3 that are booked in next year: 26th, 27th of February, 23rd, 24th of April, and the 25th and 26th of June. And you can book on lsbrowncenter.com. And that allows you to go in and see what's going on. If you want to take an image of this, then you can. This is a QR code for your CPD cert and feedback. Obviously, we need to have some feedback to be able to provide you with your CPD certs. If you don't manage to get it this way, just pop us an email and we will be able to sort it out. So thank you very much. That has sort of taken us up to 55 minutes. And I'm going to finish with a little video just of a couple of our customers. And then if there's any questions, we can take the questions. Oh, that is us finished. Let's see. So thank you, everybody, for coming on. Oh, it says no sound on the video. Apologize that. They were just saying how wonderful it was. So hopefully everybody enjoyed that. And if you want to ask me any questions, then that's fine. That's no problem. You can ask me questions. Oh, FP1, yeah. So FP1 is fine. We do that through GuidedSMILE Natural, which is just a slightly different solution. We also work with a kit which is called the Universal Shaper Kit. Part of the problem for FP1 is that often you still need to do some bone contouring and shaping. It's a bit of a misnomer to think that you can just do it with no bone alteration at all. So the Universal Shaper Kit allows you to flare around the necks of the MUAs and the implants, but also to do it as a guided. You can either do that freehand or you can do it on a guided protocol. So we have developed a guided protocol with what's called the Universal Shaper Kit, which allows you to place the implant, flare the bone prior to fitting the MUA and your temporary bridge. So yes, so FP1 is perfectly possible. I would say it requires more surgical skill. Probably the surgeries take a little bit longer. But yeah, it's very possible. Okay, just a few thank yous. But if anybody wants to reach out to us, if the patient is unilateral crossbite, can it be corrected on the prosthetic? Just depends, I suppose. It's all within the prosthetic setup, Samir, whether that's possible or not. Sometimes we can do it and sometimes we can't. We've had a run of class 3s in at the minute, where patients have been corrected with dentures into a class 1, but actually they're skeletal class 3, and these can be quite difficult to treat with fixed bridges sometimes. So yeah, we would do our best. Yeah, cheek biting can happen, and I think that's a very fair point. We will be driven by what we feel is possible in terms of the setup, but also in terms of your feedback. So, if you want to leave it as it is, then we'll leave it as it is. That's no problem. It's a mere pleasure. So most things are possible. It's just being able to work your way through it. And it's a very much a two-way thing. It's not, people sometimes get a bit concerned that we're just going to tell you exactly the way that it has to be. We know there are certain parameters that we have to work within. We know pretty much what works and what doesn't, and where if we push the envelope a little bit too far, you might end up with problems. So what we try to do is stick within a sort of a real track as best we can, because we know now what works well. So if we're too maverick, we might end up with some trouble. But to be quite honest, we will do most cases. There are a few that we will say just no, it's not the right thing to do. But to go back, probably the most important thing that I've talked about this evening is your records. If you're doing any sort of guided surgery, the key to it is the information you put into the system. And actually, that's what we spend a significant proportion of our time, not only within the design team, but within the administration and support team, chasing and making sure that the records are right. It just can't be underestimated. Okay. Well, if there's any more questions, then that's fine. I will happily answer them as best I can. I'm not sure how many in the group are already doing maybe guided surgery or full arch. It's certainly a growing topic out there that more people are becoming interested in. But that is required for suitability review. Sometimes it's whatever you have, to be honest. Ideally, what we would like is at least a good facial photograph and a CBCT. Even intraoral photograph of the bite would be quite good. If you have iOS or models, fantastic. But a lot of people just send us in the CBCT. Now that is only going to give us a certain amount of information. We can tell quite a lot from the CBCT, but we can't obviously tell things like transition line, OVD, that how the bite is going to be. So the more information you provide for us, it's always better. But as a very basic, if we could have a full face photograph, maybe a retracted in occlusion and a CBCT, we'll have a fairly good stab at advising you about the case. So make sure that you do your feedback for your CPD folks, so we can get the CPD certs out to you. And for those maybe that haven't been able to log on, the webinar is recorded, so we will send that out. And so if you're watching on recording, hello, or if you have friends or people that would be interested in, then obviously let us know that there will be a recording of the webinar available. All right, folks. So I think if that's it, thank you very much. If we can be of any help to you in any way at all, and anything to do with guided surgery, then give us a shout. I am going to put on the most generic email that we have, which you can send any inquiry into. If it's very specific, full arch, you can send it to this. And get downloading your ebooks and get some further information on the entire process. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.